for your benefit. Um, uh, Chenrezig, are you familiar with good morning, Maggie. Are you familiar with Chenrezig? Are you familiar with that?
No.
Chenrezig is Tibetan deity for compassion. Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara, maybe you've heard of those terms. Avalokiteshvara is the thousand-eyed deity that sees all, has compassion for all. So Chenrezig is the Tibetan Buddhist version. Chenrezig is the personal yidam or deity for the Dalai Lama, and Tibetans consider the Dalai Lama to be the physical incarnation of Chenrezig. So Chenrezig sees all beings with compassionate eyes. So this is a sadhana practice, a tantric sadhana practice, which means it's a visualization. It's a transformational visualization practice that where we kind of visualize through the sadhana as we read it. You'll get this image of we're kind of painting a verbal image of Chenrezig and kind of imagining them as as we describe, and then becoming Chenrezig. So what we're doing here is shifting the way we see ourselves, right? Not looking at ourselves in terms of how we look and what we think and what our life experience has been, but we're now seeing ourselves as Chenrezig. Bless you. So the process then is, as we go through the description, is to kind of start to see ourselves in this way, right? And this is what tantric practice is all about. This is the transformational power of tantric practices, is this ability to kind of shift the view we have of ourselves, take a more inner view rather than the outer view, right, of ourselves. So it's this, we're the embodiment of Chenrezig now seeing the world in this way, right? With compassion, seeing the emptiness nature of everything arising. Is that helpful? Does that make you understand a little bit what I'm saying?
Yeah, that definitely helps. I appreciate it.
So there's a little bit more you'll see in the booklet. Excuse me. You'll see in the booklet a little commentary on this, and then there's quite a bit of imagery, right? Like iconography in the sadhana. There's in the little booklet that I sent you, there's some explanations of that iconography as well. So we do this every Thursday morning. This is our practice. We begin our practice with the Chenrezig, and then usually do a little bit of Lojong, following it. This session is a little bit different in the fact that we're going to go ahead and do the Lojong, or do the Chenrezig, take a little bit more time with it, and then have more time to work on the Lojong, more emphasis on the Lojong. And this morning it's going to be the four thoughts. Okay? Ready, set, go? Okay, all right. So let's arrive on your seat, on your Buddha seat. And it's typical with all sadhana practices, we begin with the practice of taking refuge. Sanje chonam sokchik chonam la janchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagji jinsoji pe sonam ki drola pinchir sanje drupar sho. Sanjay Chodam Sokchik Chodam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Tapsu Chi Dagji Jin Soji Pe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanjay Drupar Shod. In Buddha, Dharma, and supreme spiritual community, we go for refuge until fully enlightened. By the power of all six perfections, from generosity to non-dual wisdom, may we realize Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. Crowning the head of all beings throughout space, Chenrezig appears from Hri. Upon a white lotus and full moon seat, 5 colored light rays shine from their clear white body. They are smiling and watching with compassionate eyes. Of their 4 hands, the first pair is joined at their heart. The other right hand holds a crystal rosary, the left a white lotus. They are adorned with silks and precious jewels. An antelope skin covers their shoulder. Buddha Amitabha crowns their head. They sit with legs in Vajra position. Their backrest is a stainless moon. All refuges are united in them. Lord of whitest form, unsullied by faults, crowned by the perfect Buddha, viewing all beings with compassionate eyes, to you, Chenrezig, I bow. Thus, praying intently, light emanates from Chenrezig's noble form, purifying all manifestations of impure karma and confusion. The world becomes Dewa Chen. The body, speech, and mind of all beings become the body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. All appearances, sounds, and cognition, undivided from emptiness. So we'll chant the mantra together. Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Om Mani Padme Hum Ri Om Mani Padme Hum Ri Om Mani Padme Hum Ri Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Self and others appear in Chenrezig's noble form. All sounds are the melody of the 6 syllables. All thoughts are the expanse of great wisdom. Rest in meditation. In this open space of awareness, I invite you to bring to mind a recent moment where someone showed you kindness, a loving, caring moment someone extended to you. See this moment as though it's happening right now. Honor how you feel. I invite you to bring to mind a moment of kindness that you extended to someone else, a loving, caring moment you offered to someone else. See that moment as though it's happening right now. Honor how you feel. Honor how you feel. Om Mani Padme Hum Ri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Mani, 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 mani. Money, 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 money. Home money, pay me home money, pay me home money, pay me home. By this virtue, may we swiftly realize and fully embody the attainment of Chenrezig, and thereby bring all, without exception, to its complete realization. From the power of recitation and meditation, as soon as this impure body is discarded at death, may I and all connected to me be born miraculously in Dewa Chen. Then immediately after such birth, may I quickly traverse the 10 levels of the Bodhisattva path and send emanations in all directions for the benefit of others. Om Mani Padme, 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 Om Mani Padme. So I thought maybe just take a second, go over a little bit of the iconography uh, of what we're doing in this practice. What an aspiration, huh? To be Chenrezig, just to have that, just to recognize that that capacity is already within us. And of course, we understand this as bodhicitta, don't we? This capacity to unconditionally love all beings. Right? And the expression of that love is empathy and compassion. Empathy, recognizing our own difficulties, seeing our own experiences as the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to awaken. And empathy then being the recognition of that same capacity in others, knowing their suffering intimately, not pity, not sympathy, right? Empathy, which is the direct experience of another's suffering, the visceral connection we feel with someone else in their difficulty. And compassion, the wish for us all to be free of suffering, free of that difficulty. So this is a very powerful practice. It's really, it's a wonderful practice in retreat, just to keep reminding us. It just keeps reminding us of what is essentially going on, who we essentially are, and less caught up in how we look and what we think and how we feel and what other people are doing and what's going on in the world. So it's taking the inner view, right? And even deeper than the inner view is taking the innermost view of who we are, directly experiencing the innermost view of who we are. Okay. So what was a couple things caught my eye there? Dewa Chen, the world becomes Dewa Chen, also called the Buddha lands, right? Where everybody's enlightened, right? The world becomes enlightened. Wow, what an image, huh? Can you imagine? The whole world is enlightened? Oh my God. How incredible would that be? I mean, it's hard to even fathom what that would, how that would register, isn't it? How our interactions, how we would do business, how we would build cars, how we would grow food and go to the grocery store. I mean, just imagine all of our interactions is everyone's awakened, not woke, awakened. woke's become a little bit of a political term. So Dewa Chen. So all connected to me, be born miraculously in Dewa Chen, right? The Buddha land, the Buddha fields. Of course, the image, the historical image is all these Buddhas out in the field, you know, dancing and singing, and, you know, they've got musical instruments and there's flowers growing, and, you know, it's like the Buddha fields, right? Fields filled with Buddhists. Well, those Buddhas are us, okay? Okay. So, you know, when we do the mala, when we work with the mala, we do Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, we count it on the mala, right? We use the left hand. So in the imagery here, in the visualization, we're visualizing Chenrezig with the crystal mala in their right hand, right? Yet in practice, we use mala in our left hand. So, you know, I kind of wondered about that. So it's like we're seeing Chenrezig as a reflection of ourselves. So if I'm looking in the mirror and I have my mala in my left hand, but I'm looking in a mirror, what hand is my mala in? Right? In the mirror, my mala is going to look like it's in the right hand, right? So it's kind of guiding us to see, as though we're seeing Chenrezig as though we're looking in a mirror. It's like who we are being reflected back to us. Okay. Anyway, just a couple thoughts. Speaking of the mala, you know, in Tibet, everywhere you go in Tibet, there's people are walking around, you know, with the mala, mani, 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 everywhere you go, people are going around with the mala, mani, 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 mani. So, you know, people like you go to the Jokang, you know, the ancient temple in the middle of Lhasa, and everyone's doing prostrations, right? And their prostrations are Om Mani Padme Hum. It's like the national mantra of Tibet. They don't have a national anthem, they have a national mantra. And so as you're doing the mani, and I don't know if you guys are doing the mala, if you guys are practicing with the mala or not, it's been a main part of my practice. Actually, it started my first trip to Tibet, as I bought my first mala and, you know, just started going around the Jokang with everybody else, you know, because you circumambulate, you know, doing the mani, 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 mani. And that's how they do it, is mani, 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 mani. You know, at the beginning and the end, Om Mani Padme, or Om Mani Padme, Om Hri, but mani, 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 mani. So the mantra that I use for that is mani, 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 Hom Ri. Mani, 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 Hom Ri. Mani, 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 Hom Ri. Okay? So that's kind of my personal, you know, when I'm doing the mantra, that's what's going on. It's, and then, so each syllable is a bead. Each syllable is sacred. Om Mani Padme Hum. Each syllable is a bead. So I don't know. Are any of you using a mala? Do any of you guys practice with the mala? Andrea, do you practice with the mala? You know? Yeah. You know, I used to just do the mala and didn't really even take it. I don't know. I just did it. You know, I wasn't really counting or anything. And then I heard that when reading about Petra Rinpoche, you know, the vagabond yogi, Tibetan yogi in the 19th century in Tibet, who made a vow never to sleep indoors, by the way. He just had this yak hide tent, and that's where he slept, whether he's in a cave, you know, or just, but he just made a vow he'd never sleep indoors. This is in Tibet. That's pretty challenging. And I mean, in the summer in Tibet, it's cold. It's like, it's just like, you know, it's the harsh climate. So he had a thing where he would not take a student until they had done 10 million manis. He wouldn't even talk to you if you hadn't, you know, until you'd done 10 million manis, he wouldn't even talk to you. So that's what got my attention. So that's when I first started using a mala. And then when we were doing the first 100-day retreat, His Holiness the Galwang Drupa, 14th Galwang Drupa, the head of the Kagyu, Drupa Kagyu lineage, the old friend of Surya's. Surya had years ago when Surya was in India, he taught the Drupa English. They were in Rishikesh, and they had. He was living in a house that was right next door to the house where the Drupa, His Holiness the Drupa Rinpoche was living. He was like 10 years old, and Surya was in his early 20s, and Surya and the Drupa's tutor came over and asked Surya, would you teach His Holiness English? And so he was, the Drupa was his English student. So they remained fast friends, very close friends to this day. So when His Holiness came to the U.S., we were doing the first 100-day retreat up at Osaling in Austin. And he came, and it was a Nundro retreat. And His Holiness came and did 2 weeks, spent 2 weeks with us there, which was extraordinary. Teaching every day, almost all day, every day. I mean, just phenomenal. And at one point he told a story. His father, oh gosh, there's another quite well-known Rinpoche, obviously. It's a lineage, right? It's a heritage. Garo Rinpoche took him up into Ladakh. They traveled up into Ladakh and were visiting a hermit yogi, a cave yogi up in Ladakh that was a friend of Rinpoche's father, His Holiness's father. And they're kind of having this visit and chatting and whatever, and the whole time, the old hermit is, is working the mala. The whole time the mala is going, it's going. And so at one point, Gar Rinpoche asked, so how many? And, like, how many mantras? How many? And the hermit yogi said, oh, I don't know. I stopped keeping count years ago, right? And so when they were leaving, His Holiness the Father said, too bad. It's really too bad that he stopped counting. He said, that would be such an inspiration, right? Because you can imagine, it would be how many millions, right? Sitting in the cave, basically doing mantra all day, So I don't know. I encourage the mala. I really do. I encourage doing the mantra. I think it's a helpful support. It's a physical support for our practice. It's something. It's like laying there. There it is. It's like and so I recommend it. All right. Any questions about the sadhana before we go into the Lojong? Any comments, insights?
Terry, I had a question about when you say
What do you mean?
you say the mantra, during your meditation, or when are you doing the beads? Because
Pretty much all the time.
all the time. So when you're meditating, you're doing the beads through.
No, I mean, that's really a good question. There's time in our meditation when we're just dropping everything, right?
Right.
So we're just kind of letting everything go. But it's a great way to, always when doing refuge, and then always when doing the dedication, and then I mean, pretty much whatever I'm doing. Not when I'm driving, but pretty much whatever I'm doing. I mean, I'm not doing the mala, obviously, when you're working on the typewriter, working on the computer. But like in my office, when I'm have a client, and I'm, the client's, in working, and I'm sitting outside. That's a good time to practice. Anytime is a good time to practice.
It's interesting, the bead thing, culture, because the Greeks have it. But not counting the mala. But I don't know where it comes from as far as the rosary. But they have small little things, and they spin them, and they do this.
They call them worry beads.
Yeah, I know. And Islam does it, or the
Islam,
Muslims do it.
Catholics do it.
Yeah, and they just have this.
Yeah, pretty much all the traditions. Hindus
Yeah,
do
it's interesting. Wonder where it.
it, Sikhs do it. Have malas. Pretty much every tradition has
I wonder if it originally came from Buddhism, because it's older.
Hindu. I don't know. It's very old. It's
Yeah.
very old. So it's really prehistory.
Mhm.
Yeah, but pretty much all the major esoteric traditions have work with them all. Mm. Okay.
I have a
All right.
question.
Anything else? Yeah,
I
go
do.
ahead.
Can you talk a little more about Dewa Chen? I ask because I'm a little blurry about, is it a place? Is like heaven would be? Is it an
Yeah.
attitude?
Yeah, like that. Yeah,
Does
exactly.
its existence is expansive, like it exists in the present moment.
It's a reference. Okay, Dewa Chen is a reference. It's a way of it's like peace on earth. Okay, may there be peace on earth. Kind of what does that look like? So you see what I'm saying? It's not like necessarily a place where we go when we die, though we don't know, but it's reborn in Dewa Chen, right? We reborn in a world of peace and harmony and unity and wholeness and wisdom, compassion, all the above, right?
But consciousness is not, wait. I'm just trying to feel what that is like. I think when we go through the sadhana, like I'm there already. Like when we go through the imagery and iconography, like I feel present in that space.
That's it. Yeah.
But there's no division. There's no division. So I just wanted to ask: is it like this place that that's where we want to be, or is that place existing right now?
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, for some it is. For some, the whole universe is as fully present as it is. There's no, undiminished, unlimited love and compassion, wholeness, unity, wisdom. But it's in the sadhana practice. It's like we're using that as a context, right? This is a reference. Right?
It's not a goal.
Not necessarily a goal. No, it's not like we can die and go to heaven. It's like if you're good, you'll die and go to heaven, right? But it's kind of like that because we're being reborn in Dewa Chen.
It's an energetic quality.
Yeah,
like a frequency that we have connected with, or a vibration. Dewa Chen.
It's the kind of thing we were trying to build in the '60s, when we were living on a hippie commune, it's that kind of thing, right?
So it's this innate knowingness of a place that is perfect.
You could say, yeah, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, Ann Lar. Didn't mean to ignore you. Nice seeing you again, and I see Elise has joined us too. Great seeing you.
Can I just have a problem with the word perfect.
Bring it. Bring it.
Oh, say more about that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, okay. So, I don't like the word perfect. I grew up with the Christianity conception of perfection, and we're not perfect and we have to be perfect. And so I don't, for me, some state of oneness, which that's how I would describe it, is not perfect. But that's right. Like
Mm.
it's because perfect implies to me, and maybe this is just my problem with the word, perfect implies to me everything lovely and roses and happiness.
Mm.
But that's not perfection. I don't think, because you can't, like, who can live like that? Because ultimately you're gonna disintegrate into all kinds of poor personality conflicts, right?
Right.
If you're just living in this state of gratification and everything you want you get, and it's just desire.
Yeah, but
right?
see, it would be free of desire.
But I disagree that heightened, like, everything's groovy is where it's at. Like,
Right. So
we want to be accepting of what is, and what isn't always groovy. But it doesn't mean that it's not of value for where we're at right now.
Okay, so Andrea, Dzogchen means innate great perfection, right? I mean, that's the way that term, in our lineage, the Dzogchen lineage, that term is translated as innate great perfection. And what we're taught is that this is not a neurotic sense of perfection, right? This is the fact that everything that we're experiencing is wisdom.
Right.
Even difficulty, even suffering.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
because we start using the word heaven.
right.
Like, is that what this is?
No,
and
that's why I said it's not heaven.
So the sense of perfect, I just felt like we needed to talk about it a little bit more.
Perfect. Absolutely. That's an absolutely perfect thing to talk about. Because again, if we have like you're saying, if we have this neurotic sense of perfection, like everything the way I wants it to be, right? I wants it to be like this. I want you to act a certain way. I want this whole world to be in a certain format, right? The I-isness of things, right? The neurotic I-isness of things, where the I is now calling the shots, but the I is a very limited sense of I, isn't it? It's not the isness, it's just the I, where is a more neurotic, wanting to control, wanting things my way. So and you're absolutely right. So it's not, perfection is not that, is it? Perfection is seeing every moment, every instant of life experience as the opportunity of wisdom. It's pointing something out, it's sharing something, it's offering me something, right? So, this is a key part. Like, we're going to talk about the four thoughts this morning, right? The introduction to the Lojong is the four thoughts to turn the mind. And of course, the first thought is suffering. And why does the Buddha, and of course the four thoughts are reflecting the Four Noble Truths. The four thoughts come out of the Mahayana as a skillful means to better inquire to the depth and wisdom of the Four Noble Truths that are the basis of all Buddhist traditions. Right? So in this approach, suffering, the reason the Buddha taught suffering in the First Noble Truth was because suffering is our opportunity to awaken. First is that the human condition is suffering. It's the recognition that suffering exists. Right? That's first. We all have suffering. Every one of us suffers in one form or another, right? Sometimes in many forms simultaneously. But the point is, suffering is universal. So this is kind of translated as the unenlightened state is suffering. So suffering, how many kind of things that are happening to us over which we have no control? You know, like this COVID thing, right? I mean, we're seeing suffering all around us. We're seeing suffering happen, to people we know and love, and people we, would never meet, all experiencing, this pandemic. Right? So many forms of suffering. A hurricane hit southern Texas here a few days ago. And those things cause suffering. We've been through it here in Galveston. We've been through, a few of them, and that's a big deal. So something happens to a loved one. Maybe we lose something. Buy a new car and go to the grocery store and come out and find out somebody smashed into it. Right? I mean, these are things, kinds of suffering, all kind of different levels of suffering, over which we have no control. Outer suffering. Right? So we reflect on that, and we reflect that this is universal. Everyone we meet, everyone we know, everyone we can think about or imagine, all has this kind of suffering. Every one of us, right? And not just humans too. I mean, look at suffering that's going on, in all realms of life, all forms of life are experiencing hardship in this way. Loss, pain, disease, death, right? Suffering. So then it brings us to the inner suffering. So that's the outer suffering, the inner suffering, right? So this is how I feel, isn't it? These are painful, difficult thoughts, painful, difficult feelings and emotions that I'm feeling, right? And I'm not alone there either, am I? Each of us, each one of us has difficult thoughts, difficult feelings, difficult emotions, personal feelings of loss, personal feelings, grief, shame, guilt, right? Remorse, regret, right? More inner suffering that we have. So here, this brings us then, the Buddha now introduces, when we're talking about inner suffering, the Buddha introduces this second noble truth, which is, what is the cause of suffering? Now it's maybe harder for me to imagine what's causing someone else to suffer, but it's entirely possible to have insight into my inner suffering. What is the cause of this thought? What is the cause of this feeling? Right? What's causing this? And we can see that certain outer influences affect our inner state of being, don't they? Right? But there are also inner causes of suffering. And of course, the second thought is also in the four thoughts. It's referred to as karma. The first thought is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, dissatisfaction. Right? So, what is this inner cause of dukkha, of dissatisfaction? Why do I have these feelings of dissatisfaction, frustration, irritation, anger, resentment? And the Buddha points out to us, because we're holding on to a sense of self. In other words, we're holding on to a truth or a reality that's not accurate. We have attachment. We have this fixation to a sense of a self, to a sense of reality that's not true. So how does that come up? Well, I would like you to act a certain way, and I assume because you like me, right? You consider me a friend, or you love me, I assume that because that you like me, that you're going to act a certain way. Right? I have this assumption about you that because you're who you are, or because you have a certain title, or because you have a certain position, or you know, I assume that you're going to. This is how things are going to happen. This is how it's going to go. Right? Well, what happens then when you don't act the way I assume that you should be acting, or you don't do what I assume you should be doing? What happens then? I feel hurt, disappointment, frustration, irritation, even anger. And if it goes on long enough, I'll even cultivate a resentment, won't I? Because you're not living up to my expectations. And my expectations are only being created by my own assumptions. So this is my part, isn't it? For inner suffering, I'm now seeing my part. How I'm holding on to assumptions, expectations about how things should be. And then I'm suffering hurt and disappointment. So then resentment rears its ugly head. And I can tell you, it's a really ugly head, right? Resentment is one of the few things that has the power to kill love. It can kill. Love is the most powerful thing in the universe, and resentment comes real close to being able to kill it. Right? How many relationships, how many divorces, how many separations, how many losses of friendship, right, have been the result of resentment? So what is resentment? Resentment is I'm holding on to, I have a ledger here. Right? I'm keeping a tally. I'm keeping track of when you do and when you don't, right? So I'll come up and I'll say, well, you always do this, or you never do that, right? So these two terms, always and never, are a key trigger to how resentment is working in my mind, right? There's a pattern here. You never make the bed or wash the dishes or fill the car with gas, or I mean whatever, any kind of thing in terms of particularly a domestic relationship, right? You know, building up this, you know, keeping a tally like it's a ledger. I'm building a case, aren't I? Right? When this goes to trial, here's my evidence that you were the one that really screwed up. You're the one that's causing all this difficulty, all this disruption, right? I've got my case, I've got my ledgers here, and I'm keeping track. I got my yellow notepads, right? And so that's what resentment is doing, right? So resentment is kind of the extreme of inner suffering. And there's a couple of things, other things that resentment is doing. It's causing me to feel that I'm a victim. I'm giving you the power now to control how I think, how I feel, control my emotions. It's up to you to make me happy. You're not making me happy. And so I have this resentment, right? So you can see how artificial this is, how I built this whole dynamic, this whole relationship, this inner whole, and it's all in my mind, isn't it? It doesn't exist anywhere else. Its only reality is in my imagination, right? And it's coming from habits, patterns of thinking and feeling that it's someone else's job to fix me, to make me happy. It's because we're in a relationship, it's your responsibility to make me happy. I'm holding you responsible. Well, you can see how this it can't be resolved, can it? As long as I'm thinking this way, as long as I'm holding on to these kinds of thoughts and feelings, there's no way it can be resolved. There's no relief for that suffering, is there? Other than for me to now recognize my part. Right? What did I assume? What did I expect? Right? So this sense of an I, you know, I don't want to get too much into the whole term ego, but this term, this sense of an I, this sense of a self, has built up this reality, right? Assume that because this relationship is this or that it should be going this way or that way. So this is where the shoulds come in, right? Right? We start shoulding all over ourselves. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I just want to share how grateful I am to have you as a teacher, because I began this path seriously maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And when you start this path without that knowledge of having compassion towards yourself and awareness towards this work, I think when you begin to see the truth, that in my own personal relationship,
Mm-hmm.
it has caused a lot of friction.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of friction that I feel like is there more than it
Mm-hmm.
would be if I was in ignorance.
Well, you could say that, but the solution, you know, like, you know, the standard medicine, you know, a century or so ago was like cod liver oil, right? I mean, you'd make the kids take cod because it was, I don't know, what is it rich in? It's all kinds of vitamins, but
Omegas.
yeah, omegas, right? But you know, you always say, you know, well, yeah, the cure is sometimes worse than the disease, right? So it's this way with Dharma practice too. We start having to take responsibility for ourselves. It's painful. It's difficult. It's very difficult because now I'm taking responsibility for what's going on in my life. I'm not holding you responsible for how I think or how I feel. And, you know, I mean, as a kid, we want to blame somebody else, don't we? It's your fault that I'm crying. You know, it's your fault that this happened. But, you know, as we mature, you know, at some point, I'm going to offer the teaching on the 4 maturities, 4 different ways that we mature, right? Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But as we mature, then it's a process of taking more and more responsibility for my life and for what's happening in my life and what I'm doing in my life and how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, right? So this is the inner suffering. This is what the inner suffering is pointing out. What's my part? Yeah. What mental constructions, fabrications, imaginations do I have about reality that aren't accurate? And how I know that is because I'm suffering. Right? I know it's not accurate because I'm suffering.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what the Buddha is pointing out to it. That's why he's teaching suffering is the very first noble truth. You know, it's the gateway. So our difficulties, our suffering, is the gateway to awakening, to taking full and complete responsibility for who and what we are. Okay? So the innermost. Oh yeah, go ahead, Andrea, please.
I feel like there's just a subtle aspect of it that we may be just assuming, and so I feel like what you're talking about, Chris, is, or at least when I think about it in my own experience, as we're doing this work, we become more and more present, which has us less and less in denial, because we're present and we're taking in the reality that is, right? Instead of either pushing it away, reframing it into something more palatable, or, you know, just denying it all, you know, wholeheartedly. So there's this other aspect to it of, yes, taking responsibility, but it's also about seeing clearly and discernment. So what someone else's actions are their actions that they have to take responsibility for as well. And it's our positionality to that we're looking at. So that person may actually be a toxic person. And the reality is we maybe shouldn't be with a toxic person. And I'm not commenting on anyone. I'm just saying there are other aspects of life that we have to bring into the conversation. You know what I mean?
That's the outer part, isn't it? That's where the outer and the inner meet, don't they? And our ability to to have skillful discernment about what's my part, right? I mean, I don't want to sit here and be a doormat, right? Just like, do whatever you want to because I'm not responsible. You're not responsible. That's not helpful at all. You're exactly right. So what you're pointing out, Andrea, is that where the discernment that has to take place between the outer and the inner, right? Right. Yeah. When I'm taking responsibility for how I feel, it may be a choice to no longer be engaged. Right?
And just for the record, I just want to say that the disappointment that I feel in this process, in this work, is my reactivity. I feel like I can step back from other people's sense of presence or lack thereof, or my own, but it's my reactivity that I believe is the most alarming at this point.
To you.
To me, because it's that mirror once again. It's like something that I'm not aware of, but that I'm looking at in the eye. So that discernment again, I mean, that's such a great word for this practice, and we forget. I forgot that word, even though it's monumental in what we're doing. So being reminded is so important to this practice.
Exactly right.
And I'm so grateful for this. So
okay, well, thank you. That's good. Yeah, it's what we're learning is to discern accurately what's going on, right? And this means what is going on, how we're perceiving, interacting, responding, or reacting, responding externally, but also now this inner part, right? This is why this outer, inner, and innermost component of these teachings is, I think, so powerful, is because it gives us a way of seeing things that is workable. I can, I don't have to keep taking responsibility for what somebody else is doing, right? I only have to take responsibility for how I'm responding, reacting, interacting, engaging in that. Yeah. So that's good, Andrea and Chris both. That's a good way of refining that. Okay. So then, Elise, you're going to take off?
Hi, sorry. Thank you for this time this morning, and apologies for sort of popping in late. I thought it was an 8:30 start.
Yeah. Okay, well, come back. Come see us again.
I will do my best. Thank you.
It'll be good to hear from you too.
Thank you all. Be well.
Right. Okay, you too. Thanks.
And just Terry, Philip texted me. He said he had a prior arrangement or engagement.
Yeah, fine.
He had to pop
That's
off.
fine.
He wanted me to tell you.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Okay. So what about the innermost part then? This deep sense of angst, right? That's not being, not really being triggered from, we can't really see something outside of us responsible for that. It's just something that comes up. It's like not even being triggered so much, but it's this kind of deep sense of not knowing who we are, not knowing our true nature, right? And this is where the truth of suffering is taking us deeper and deeper into our innermost being, right? Kind of things that aren't so conscious, patterns of thinking, feeling, responding that we're not so, haven't been so conscious of, haven't been so aware of. And now we start to notice it, right? how how this innermost suffering is how I'm responding now to myself, how I'm working with myself, and different parts of me that are coming up and being expressing as reactions or as being judgmental or critical of myself. Yeah. Oh, I'm so this or I'm so that, and I can never do this and I can never do that. So it's kind of almost an inner quality of resentment, isn't it, that we've built up, being our kind of inner critic of who I am, and not deeply trusting in who I truly am. Right? So this is the point. This is where the very profound teaching that we are all Buddhas. We all have this awakening potential within us. And of course, in the five skandhas, we call this virtue. So our true nature then has the two wings, right? Awareness and virtue. Right? We have a life force, a life form, but it's this quality of our ability to know, to perceive, to process, awareness, and our innate quality of virtue. Now, why is our innate quality virtue? Why is our innermost nature virtue? Because without virtue, we couldn't really connect with anything. We couldn't really connect with another person. We have to be connected with others for protection, production, and procreation. We're connected at a very deep level, right? So let's then look at that innermost connection in terms of how I'm feeling connected to myself. How my sense of well-being, my sense of deep happiness, right? Contentment with myself. Am I critical, judgmental of myself? Am I comparing myself to someone or something else that I think has more than I do, or less, or do I feel better or superior to someone else who I feel I have more than, right? I'm starting to, these kinds of patterns are now coming up in our meditation. Right? We're more aware of, because I'm not holding anyone else responsible for how I feel, because I'm now aware of patterns that I have and assumptions and expectations, I can now, my meditation goes deeper. I'm now directly experiencing the kinds of relationship that I have with myself and any feelings I have of dissatisfaction about myself, any feelings that are critical or judgmental, negative. And what I realize is that there are deep there's kind of these deep attachments and aversions that have been going on since we were children. Okay? This is a joyful process, by the way. This is where suffering, this is like when the Lojong invites us, a joyful mind always sustains me. It's because when I realize that this is what I'm doing, that's a joyful moment. It's not a moment for more judgment and more depredation. It's not a moment of self-pity or kind of inner blaming ourselves. Any more than I'm blaming outer, I don't want to do any inner blaming. It's not helpful. I don't want to do it because it's not helpful. Right? So this is a joyful moment. Oh, that's what I do. Oh, that's it. Okay. So that gives me something to work with, doesn't it? This is the innermost feelings. I call it angst, just because it's kind of a something that's kind of like a dark cloud that's hanging around, throwing a shadow on my so-called happiness. Right? So this is really the real power of becoming more and more sensitive, more and more discerning about how I feel, honoring how I feel, just honoring it. Not trying to justify it, not blaming, not judging, not comparing, not rationalizing, right? Just honoring it, right? being as honest as I can be with myself, not judging. This is so important, not judging the judging. Right? Well, I judge myself. Oh my God, I keep judging myself. What's wrong with me, right? That's judging the judging. Right? So now reality is surfacing, isn't it? Old patterns of attachment and aversion, liking and disliking, preferences, just subtle preferences, right? I mean, we see what's going on right now in the world around us in terms of what's being called systemic racism. And systemic racism isn't just about black and white, male or female, old or young, culture against culture. It's all of those things, isn't it? These preferences that, oh, this is better. Oh, because I look this way, because I act this way, because I have this, because of who I know, I'm better. I know, I'm more worthy. But we're starting to see how this it pollutes everything around us, doesn't it? Causes strife and suffering of everything around us. But these deep sensibilities, these deep biases and prejudices are kind of systemic within ourselves, aren't they? These preferences that, because I'm driving this car and you're driving that car, I'm better than you, right? Because I have this and you don't have that, I have more rights than you do. Works on a lot of levels, doesn't it? But let's just look at it. I mean, that's how this manifests in the world around us. But we're now taking this opportunity in our meditation just to look at it within ourselves and notice, oh, I'm kind of reacting to a situation or having this certain feeling because this is how So what we're looking at is our own attitudes, opinions, beliefs. Right? Years ago, I got involved in the recovery community and a source of spiritual support. And there's some things that were going on in our family dynamic. And one of the things that came out of my work there was that I didn't really know how I felt. I didn't really know how I felt about different family members, about almost anything. I had a lot of opinions and whatever, but when I started meditating and it was like, well, how do I feel? How do I feel about this person, for example, a particular family member? Right? How do I really feel? And I was driving over the causeway and going up into Houston, and this person, cut me off in traffic, and I really reacted like, "Wow, you jerk, you idiot, blah blah blah, and I thought, "Oh wow, that's a feeling." I'm experiencing a feeling here. I'm pissed because of the way you're driving. Right? Don't you know this is dangerous? Don't you know you can kill me or you or anybody else? I mean, you idiot, it's like, like that. And wow, that's a feeling. And then I realized, no, it wasn't really a feeling. It's just an attitude. That was an amazing moment. I just have this attitude about the way you're driving, maybe the kind of car you're driving. And I had all these attitudes about being in a car and driving, being in a traffic society. Okay, I realize it's a whole society. People are sending signals and communicating, and all kind of expressing themselves in all kinds of ways when we're driving. And I had a lot of attitude around that. I'm the good driver. That was my attitude. I'm the one that drives well. I'm the one that knows how to drive. Right? And it was just an attitude. It wasn't true at all. So attitudes can mask feelings. That's my point. I want to get into my innermost feelings, my innermost attachments and aversions, my innermost ignorance. I want to get to that. I want to tap into that. I want to expose it for what it is, because I know that in the light of truth, it's going to free me up. Right? This is the blessing of suffering: is it frees us of things that are causing us to suffer and others. So that's why the Buddha taught suffering, the First Noble Truth. So our first thought to change the mind is reflect upon dukkha. Reflect upon any feelings of dissatisfactoriness. Any feelings of dissatisfaction. This isn't good enough, or this isn't enough, or this is too much. And what we notice is we have a lot of preferences. Well, I'd really prefer if you didn't talk so much. I would really prefer if you were just a little quieter. Right? I would really prefer it if, too hot, too cold, too bright, too dark, too this, too that. Our preferences. And it'll expose a lot of attitudes. And we'll see opinions, we'll see beliefs. I mean, these people that are standing up and saying, I would do anything to defend that flag, right? But I won't wear a mask, right? I mean, what? Right? Now, who's running the show there? Opinion, attitude, belief is running the show, isn't it? In that moment. For that person, it's their conditioned patterns of attitudes and beliefs that are running the show, not the conscious mind, not the aware mind. And so I want to expose that in myself. I can't do anything about your beliefs and your attitudes, but I sure can do something about my own. This is where we have control. This is the beauty. This is the joy of inner and innermost suffering, is because I have the freedom, the ability, the innate capacity to do something about this. This I can change. That's why it's such a joyful opportunity. Not only is change inevitable, change is possible, right? When we're working at this level. I can't change the guy who's going to, not wear a mask. And that's only getting worse. I can't change that. I can shed some light on it, but I can't change the sensibility, the mind, the patterns, the habits, the attitudes, beliefs, opinion. I can't change those that are driving that kind of behavior, that kind of thinking, can I? I don't have the power to change that. I just have it. I have that, but I do have that power here. I have that freedom here. Andrea.
I just have a question, sort of for everyone, because as you're talking, it's making me, reflect on some conversations in different groups that I've had this week, and what you're describing of revealing our I don't know how you said it now, but revealing ourselves to ourselves, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. I guess, mm-hmm. Can be incredibly unsettling and uncomfortable.
Definitely.
And I think, and I'm just curious what other people's thoughts are. I'm sorry, I'm outside. What other people's thoughts are on that for themselves, because it seems to me that when we're engaging in these kinds of practices, not just these, there's others, but for example, these practices, mm-hmm. there's at least some interest and curiosity in that kind of reflection and revelation. Mm-hmm. But it also seems like there's a lot of folks that are not are even more resistant. Like I can certainly feel resistant to it myself, and yet I keep going, I keep digging. But I'm wondering, you know, what other people's experiences are with that, and what the difference is. You know, what is there a way to encourage others to do that kind of? I don't know. You know what? I'm not forming my question very well, but
no, you're. I mean, it's the suffering that's encouraging us to do it, isn't it? It's knowing that the suffering is the opportunity to awaken, to realize peace of mind, to no longer be so critical and judgmental of ourselves, to root out deep feelings of attachment and aversion, right? I mean, that's the attraction. I mean, that's been the attraction for thousands of years, right? To wake up. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not sure everybody has that attraction, though.
No. You know what? The attraction is in the ideal. So when I communicate the wisdom that I've experienced in this practice in conversation, it can seem all very like shiny and beautiful, but how I got to that realization was shit. It was mucking through my own shit, and I have so much shit, beautiful shit, to like compost and utilize and work through. The practice is the most difficult part.
It is.
I think intuitively we know what virtue is, and when we talk about it, it's like what we talked about last time, the word bodhicitta. Like, I love that. But to practice the bodhicitta is a whole nother thing. To actually be authentic with that ideal and live that
with yourself,
is the work.
With ourselves, be authentic.
With ourselves, and nobody else we can't do that for anybody else.
And nobody else can do it for us.
Exactly. So that's the huge struggle for me, Andrea, is like living it, first of all, but then being able to communicate that with others to inspire them. This isn't an evangelical practice, so it's really tricky. Like, how do you got to just keep focusing on your own practice, keep focusing on your own. And that is the hardest for me. Like, this is lab, this is Dharma lab, and this is great. This is easy for me to show up to, thankfully, easy to communicate with. The hard part is sitting afterwards. The hard part is sitting before, individually, on my own.
But let's not leave out the part of when we discover, you know, you've all experienced this moment, this insight, a moment of insight, okay? How extraordinary that is. Oh, right? That's what I do, right? That's how it is. That joyful, the joy of an insight where it just, like it just, you know, breaks wide open, right? That's what keeps us going, isn't it? You know, we kind of go insight to insight.
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm asking. What keeps, because I think it's different for different people. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it? For you, not for you, Terry, because you've already told me, and Chris has told me. What about the others?
Okay, good.
I wanted to say two things came up, Andrea, when you were and Terry talking about this. One was where you said, Terry, that preferences expose attitudes, and attitudes can mask feelings. So I think some of the process is to experience feelings fully, and as you say, to honor them. But that can be, as Andrea is saying, very difficult. For me, often feelings have no language to them, nothing. It's an embodied kind of experience. And it takes sitting with it and a willingness to be aware. And about that, Andrea, I remember how enormously helpful it was to me one day when you talked about the clunky moments in the process of deepening awareness, a kind of awareness that can actually affect habits and things like masking feelings and so on. You talked about how sometimes it's smooth, and you're kind of in sync with your what you're striving for in honoring yourself while you're experiencing these difficult feelings. And other times it's very clunky. And I've been so often been able to use that in a process of deepening awareness, which is what I think you're saying we want to go for or be there for. So anyway, that was what I was thinking about.
Very nice. Very nice. Maggie, what keeps you going?
I found the part about like influencing others, like here we are working through our own path and then finding these insights or finding things within ourselves. I've been finding, and kind of keeps coming up obviously when I'm reading and I come across a great thought, a great idea or a great insight, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what I do, or that, oh wait, that's what so-and-so does too. Ooh, I should share that with them. Maybe they'll get it too because I'm getting it, so maybe they'll get it. And then, so that comes up a lot. And then I'm trying to back away from that. It's like, okay, I don't need to heal anybody anymore because it doesn't work. And I've tried in a variety of different situations where I've involved myself in other people's lives in a very in-depth way, thinking that my influence would somehow alter their trajectory. And it has not. I may be able to lead people to water, but you can't make them drink. And so I'm trying at this point, and this is some of that, I don't know if you know, but my husband's retiring and we're moving out in the woods in a tiny cabin, and we are decided we need to take the binky out of a lot of people's mouths because it's not helping them at all. You know, we thought it was helping, and it's really impeding their growth because they need to find their growth on their own, whether they do or not. I can't do anything about it, but I can about myself. And so as I'm reading and I'm coming across these, oh, so-and-so should read this, I'm trying to back it up and go, okay, how is this for me? I need to not be scattered off, and it just derails my thought, and I go off into what I need to do for them. And I need to keep coming back to me and seeing how it relates to my stuff. That's what has been coming up for me lately.
Good. That's really good. So, Andrea, also you brought up this term resistance, and resistance is another trigger, isn't it? You know, and we all face, all of us at certain point, at certain times in our practice, will come up against resistance. I just don't want to sit today. I just don't want to sit today. or whatever associate, whatever our practice is. And resistance is so helpful. I mean, it really is. If we know that that's a trigger that's going to slow it, it's going to impede what we're doing. Just understanding the nature of resistance. I had someone several years ago ask me, well, she was a yoga teacher. What does the Buddha Dharma say about resistance? And I couldn't really answer her at the time, but her question was very helpful for me, because then I started noticing when we're experiencing resistance and really what that is. So we just bring that to the practice. Yeah. So we've taken almost the whole time up on just the first thought, and I thought we were going to get through all four this morning. So anyway, we've touched on the second thought of karma, and the fact that suffering, the way the Buddha taught it was, suffering is caused, right? And because it's caused, there's a cure. This is kind of old logic. This is kind of an old way of logicking how in former times people would debate a particular issue, particularly because the debates were all around exactly what we're talking about. And so the Buddha, the way he framed the discussion was, suffering is universal and that suffering is caused. Now, what does that mean? If it wasn't caused, if there was no cause for suffering, it means that you can't deal with it. There's nothing we can do about it, right? But when he says, oh, it's caused, that was an enormous insight. And because it's caused, there's a cure, right? And so what is the cause? And that's the second thought, is habit. Habit. Conditioned patterns. And we've already touched on this. Patterns of attachment, aversion, indifference. Habits of just ignorance or indifference. Not wanting to know. Not paying attention. Not knowing that we can know. That's the ignorance part. Not knowing that we can understand, we can know and recognize these causes. Okay? So the third thought to turn the mind is the precious human opportunity. We have this moment, we have this brief life that is the opportunity to awaken. Right? We all have the urge to awaken. I contend, I'm asserting that we all have this urge to awaken. Right? It's our natural awareness, just our awareness, the fact that I want to know what that is. I want to know how that works. I want to know who you are. Right? I want to know how that tastes. I want to know how this feels. Right? We want to know. We have this desire to know, to understand even deeper with how we feel. Okay. So Andrea's pointing out, Mickey, that you didn't share. Maybe share a little bit just where you are with what we're talking about with our practice. I apologize for that. I kind of was waiting for people to raise their hands. So, but if it's okay with you, then I'll call on you. I don't mean to single you out, but
no, that's fine. Definitely the last little part you were talking about, resistance. I've been experiencing that. I really feel like almost like I've been on the edge of a precipice. My suffering is calling me to accept the fact that I'm the one who has to work this out. I'm the one who has to work this through, that these are my issues. And there's a hesitancy there, I've noticed, to take that step of saying, okay, I'm not helpless. I'm not hopeless. I am the one who can do the work here. Mm-hmm. I am the one that can make changes and get this thing going in the right direction. So I have experienced that. And the resistance, I guess, is the hesitancy. you know, I've always, throughout my life, I've always blamed what's going on in my life on other people or situations around me, circumstances, my environment, et cetera, et cetera. And now coming to a place where I'm really being called, I feel I'm being called to make that change of admitting that it's my life, that I'm in control of it, and that I need to apply myself to understanding what's going on and making the necessary changes in my life. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you found us, and I'm glad we found you. So yeah, that's good. It's very good.
Mikey, I just want to say that when you were speaking, you got to this point where you touched your hearts, and your voice and your presence just really lit up. And I just wanted to let you know that there was that gesture that you made to speak honestly with us, and I just really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
No, thank you.
This is how Sangha works, okay? I mean, I think I kind of wanted to say this at the very beginning. What we're doing here is taking refuge. We're learning that there is a place within us and among us that is kind of brilliant. Okay, it's there's wisdom, there's love, there's conversation, engagement, attention. There's just kind of all of our best qualities are coming forth. It's an opportunity for all of our best qualities to express themselves. And this is how we understand refuge, what it means to take refuge. And I think what Andrea's pointing out, and each of you have shared on, is that there is also this point within us of refuge. This is our innermost, and what in Dzogchen we call our innermost secret level of being, that is always present, a stillness, a quiet, a peace, a radiance, a loving presence that is always within us. We're hardwired with this, and some people call it our Buddha nature, some people call it our true nature, but it's this innermost kind of secret place of wholeness and completeness. And that's what we're learning about here. That's what we're engaging with here. And I think that just having that a sense of presence with that kind of overwhelms the resistance, overwhelms the reluctance, overwhelms the habitual patterns, the attitudes and opinions and assumptions and expectations. That it's that innermost secret nature where there's no residue, no attachment to a sense of a self, a conditioned sense of a self, with negativity and judgment, and it's pure wisdom, pure love, and pure wisdom. So I mean, this is where we're going, right? Because this is where we're coming from. So what we're doing here is we're circling back on ourselves. Our practice is allowing us to just come back to ourselves, right? Where we've gotten so engaged with the world and so engaged with our lives and everything that's everything else that's going on around us and with us and through us and by us and for us, that our practice is giving us this opportunity just to come back into the wholeness of what we already are. Right? So in this sense, the Dzogchen teaching is saying that the path is the fruit. Right? the means is the result, right? Because this is who we are. Awakening is who we already are. This was a powerful insight of the Mahayana, whereas previously it was thought you had to go through several lifetimes to kind of achieve this enlightenment potential, right? And you had to be a monk or a nun, and you had to, there's a lot of the whole Vinaya of the Abhidharma was about cultivating these qualities and eliminating the negativity and the suffering and building up and this creating this potential to become a Buddha. And only after several lifetimes would that actually be accomplished. And in the Mahayana, which is the product of thousands of enlightened beings, it was realized that when the Buddha said, "When I awakened, all beings awakened," right? Realizing that in just that phrase, the Buddha is saying, "You already are a Buddha." Right? I realized I already was a Buddha. All beings, like all beings are suffering just like me. All beings are awakened just like me. You see that? So this is, I mean, this to me is just absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Right? That we already have this within us, and that's our ultimate refuge. Okay, we have a few minutes left. I mean, of course, this is our precious human opportunity, and the last of the four thoughts is impermanence. So basically, the instruction on that thought is reflect on impermanence. Reflect on that. See that, recognize that. See the wisdom of it. The fact that change is possible. I mean, without impermanence, nothing else could exist, right? This is the emptiness. This is where impermanence is leading us into this understanding of emptiness. Without impermanence, nothing else could exist. Right? Without interdependence, nothing could be created. This is like pointing right to the emptiness nature, right? My thought that this thing or that thing or you or me is permanent, is fixed, is solid, right? We can just kind of dissolve that, can't we? We're not stuck with old patterns, old habits, old attitudes, old opinions and beliefs. We're not stuck with delusion, illusion, with attachments and aversions. We're not stuck with any of this. So reflect on impermanence. I'm not stuck with resistance. I'm not stuck with being critical and judgmental.
Terry, something in terms of impermanence and change that is pretty powerful for me to reflect on is so often we can just feel like nothing changes, and we can just kind of get wrapped up in the permanence of our conditioning.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You know what I mean,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's right.
But our lives and our developmental process, in that I was a baby, and every single day my cells turn over, and it's like a new birth every single day. But we don't perceive it because we're being conditioned to work or to be a part of a civilization, from birth onward, we're conditioned. But in a blink of an eye, we're a baby, and then we're old and facing mortality if we're lucky. So our own developmental cellular turnover, which is the same as all things, can be broken down to an infinitesimal unit. I think in Hindi they call it kalapas, that is constantly vibrating, changing. Nothing is solid. Nothing.
That's right.
And it's so like mind-blowing, but it's so natural too on the same token. It's like we are all the same. Everything.
So one thing that you just said, Chris, is we can't perceive it, right?
Yeah.
But we can be aware of it. See the difference between awareness and perception, right? Awareness goes so much deeper than anything we can perceive, right? Because it's no longer anything material, right? Perception is regarding experience, isn't it? It's regarding materiality, right? Awareness is so much deeper. We have awareness. So you have awareness now that cellularly we're changing all the time, aren't we? Transforming all the time, right? I mean, well, I won't get into that. There's certain cells that they think in the body don't regenerate, like certain neurons in the brain don't regenerate. But pretty much all of our cells are arising and dissolving, right? And this is the impermanence. Everything arising and dissolving. You know, like one of the instructions the Buddha gives on regarding suffering. This too will pass. Right? This too will pass. Whatever it is we're experiencing, this too will pass. Right? So it's like that's the impermanent nature, isn't it? And I think the fact that, well, just the insight, not only is change happening, change is also possible. Right? I'm not stuck having habits of attachment aversion. I'm not stuck there. But I can go very deep in terms of exposing that. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Any insights? Questions, comments?
I wanted to say about that sense of not being stuck and so on. Vicki, you really did something that changed me in what you were saying, where you talked about resistance and then you called it hesitancy. And I thought, what a wonderful, forgiving way to talk about resistance. You have options when you're hesitating, and things are possible, and change is possible. So I'm going to use that word, hesitancy.
Hesitancy is also a moment of discernment, isn't it? Yeah. All right, friends. Well, wow, this has been lovely. Let's do a dedication together. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and sorrows and the causes of suffering and sorrows. May we all remain undivided from the sacred joy, free from sorrow. And all together, in this moment, come to rest in the great equanimity beyond attachment and aversion. May our feet always be on the path. May our hearts be open, our minds clear, and may all of our activities be beneficial. All right, friends.